So, ladies, gentlemen, dear colleagues, good afternoon from Vienna. My name is Artyom Lazarev, and I'm a program officer at the Disease, Chemical, Biological, Radiological, and Nuclear Terrorism Prevention Program of the Terrorism Prevention Branch. I'm very pleased to welcome you all to the sixth event of the webinar series on the International Convention for the Suppression of Acts of Nuclear Terrorism, or how we call it ICSANT, and nuclear terrorism. This series is conducted by the CBRN Terrorism Prevention Program and funded by the European Union. Today's event will be focusing on the national experience of Tajikistan with adhering to and implementing ICSANT. And we are delighted to have with us today Mr. Bakhtiyor Barotov, who will help us in this endeavor. Mr. Barotov is a Deputy Director of Chemical, Biological, Radiological, and Nuclear Safety and Security Agency, which is the state regulatory authority of the Republic of Tajikistan. He graduated in chemistry from the Tajik National University in 2008. He defended his PhD in 2011 on technical sciences. For 20 years, he has worked in different positions at CBRN Safety and Security Agency, especially in the areas of nuclear security, non-proliferation, and safeguards. He also worked at the Scientific and Technical Support Organization to the CBRN Agency as a director. Last 10 years of his work are related to the implementation of different international agreements and conventions, for example, as well as UN Security Council Resolution 1540 and ICSANT, through developing national legislation and implementation plans. So before we start, let me pull. So before we start, please note that you can send your questions to the speaker to the following address that you can see on your screens. It's unodc-icsant@un.org. And we will be happy to forward them to Dr. Barotov. Also, all information on ICSANT is available on our website, which is www.unodc.org/ICSANT. So please, your questions will be very much welcomed. And just a second. So let's talk about ICSANT. Let's refresh our knowledge about this convention. So it was adopted in 2005 and entered into force in 2007. Currently, the number of parties is 127, with Ecuador being the newest member of the ICSANT family. ICSANT provides a framework for collaboration among states in addressing nuclear terrorism and other criminal acts involving radioactive material. Specifically, ICSANT requires parties to criminalize certain conduct, such as, for example, the unlawful and intentional use of radioactive sources or devices to cause death, serious bodily injury, or substantial damage to property or environment. Parties to ICSANT are also required to establish jurisdiction over these offenses and either prosecute or extradite alleged offenders. The third major area of ICSANT is international cooperation. It can take many forms, starting from preventing measures to extradition, mutual legal assistance, information exchange, to so-called post-crisis situations, meaning when an offense involving radioactive material has been conducted. Experience with adherence to and implementation of ICSANT is individual for each country, and there is no one-size-fits-all approach. Well, having said that, lessons learned by countries in this context might be very useful to other countries and help them navigate the sometimes uneasy waters of joining and implementing ICSANT. At this point, I would like to give the floor to our expert who will share with us experience of Tajikistan with becoming party and implementing ICSANT. Bakhtiyor, to you. Bakhtiyor, you're muted.
Sorry. Good afternoon, dear colleagues. It's my pleasure to share with you the national experience of Tajikistan on joining ICSANT Convention and its implementation. As you know, Tajikistan is a not nuclear country. We don't have nuclear power plants and nuclear weapon. And we are one of the post-Soviet Union countries situated in Central Asia. You can see the Tajikistan surrounded by several nuclear weapon holders countries, and we are bordering with Afghanistan. So when Tajikistan became independent country in 1991, unfortunately we had a civil war, and the most of infrastructure was destroyed, including regulatory supervision of the radioactive sources and nuclear materials in the country. So currently we see threats from the south of Tajikistan, from Afghanistan, from the terrorist groups, especially one of the branch of ISIS called Khorasan, which can be one of the threats for the Tajikistan independency, and especially for the security of Tajikistan. So we are, as an independence country, following the international community on the joining international conventions and agreements. And now I would like to share with the joining of Tajikistan to the ICSANT Convention and its implementation. So in July 2022, Tajikistan became a party of ICSANT, and it was one of the strategic moves aligned with the broader national security objectives. We passed to ratification. Presented challenges included limited awareness of nuclear terrorism risks in the country, resources constraint, and need to harmonize national legislation with international conventions and agreements. Nevertheless, through the political commitment, technical support from partners, and interagency collaboration, Tajikistan overcame this hardness. The key lessons learned included the importance of early interministerial coordination, clear legislative roadmap, and sustained dialogue with international bodies. So Tajikistan started its way joining ICSANT with the first event in December 2014 in Bangkok, where Tajik delegation were invited to be familiar with the ICSANT and the other international conventions. So after this event, in the ministries and agencies started discussions on how we can join the convention and how we can implement it in the country. So in 2021, there was a national advocacy event for Tajikistan parliamentaries were organized. And in this event, the most law enforcement agencies, representative of the parliamentaries were invited, and they discussed the importance of joining Tajikistan to this convention. It was organized by United Nations Counterterrorism Center under the United Nations Office of Counterterrorism. So, taking into account the national threats and the international threats, Tajikistan approved national strategy on on countering terrorism and extremism for 2021 and 2025. And its action plan was shared with the international community on April 2022. So after that, we joining the convention and giving ratification letter in June in that year, 2022. So after becoming officially, we started with the implementation of ICSANT in Tajikistan, and we are focusing on the three main elements. The first one is criminalization as an act involving in the unlawful use or threat of nuclear and radioactive materials were criminalized in national legislation. Second one is jurisdiction. A legal jurisdiction was expanded to cover offenses committed within and outside of national borders as mandated by the convention. And the third one, of course, international cooperation. Legal frameworks were adopted to support extradition, mutual legal assistance, and information sharing. Implementation also involved strengthening the national institution, including enhancing the capacity of the State Committee of National Security, which is the main body combating for terrorism, the Ministry of Internal Affairs, and the CBRN Safety and Security Agency, where I am working. Improving border security with detection technologies and customs training to prevent illicit trafficking of nuclear materials, and of course, establishing channels for real-time information exchange with regional and international partners. After that, we start making an amendments to the Criminal Code of Republic of Tajikistan as a one important part for criminalization of the terrorism with using VMD. So a lot of articles were added to the criminal code. You can see here additional items for the terrorism, which is using weapons of mass destruction and radioactive materials, financing crimes of terrorist nature. So it's not only covering nuclear and radioactive part, but also all other related to the combating to the terrorism. So these amendments were adopted to this criminal code and now using in the practice. Of course, this convention is not the first convention or international treaty that was Tajikistan became a party. Starting from 2001, when Tajikistan became a member of International Atomic Energy Agency, several treaties, conventions, and agreements was signed and became party by Tajikistan. And the special one is a treaty on non-proliferation of nuclear weapons and the convention of the physical protection of nuclear materials. These two main international documents was the starting point to increase and enhance the nuclear security regime in the country. After becoming a member of the IAEA, there was a regulatory body established in the country, which is started development and approve several laws and legislation in the field of nuclear security and radiation safety. So you can see several laws in the screen, which was developed and approved, which became a part of the system established in the country for nuclear security and radiation safety. For establishing nuclear security regime in the country, we are we are taking into account the several provisions of the ICSANT, especially Article 8 and Article 18. Under that, we start review the security measures where nuclear materials are used in accordance with international standards, starting search of orphan nuclear and radioactive materials in the country, established and maintained national database on nuclear materials, establish and implement the policy of final disposal of these disused nuclear materials, establishing national threat assessment to know where we have sicknesses and weaknesses to improve the system in the country, and of course establishing integrated system to struggle against nuclear terrorism and illicit trafficking of nuclear materials at the border crossing points of the country. We start installing radiation portal monitors to detect radioactive and nuclear materials. And of course, develop and implement plans and procedures of response to nuclear material detection at the border, including seizure of such materials by law enforcement agency within the territory of the country. Additional to that, we start training activities of the staff of law enforcement agencies and other stakeholders in the country. And we developed and approved national strategy on education and training in the field of CBRN. So one big part of this strategy was education and training of law enforcement agencies in the country. We start strengthening the infrastructure of CBRN SSA National Training Center on VMD non-proliferation and bringing it to the regional level in order to have courses for Central Asian countries and Afghanistan. So in the past, we have a lot of trainings with Afghanist colleagues to combat terrorism with nuclear materials. And of course, we organize training of national specialists and experts by means of regional and international training courses in the field of export control and VMD non-proliferation by support of international programs. Several border crossing points were equipped by detection equipments. For example, handheld equipments and the radiation portal monitors were installed at the border crossing points, and the equipment was delivered to the border guards and the customs services to make in operation of detection of nuclear and radioactive materials during the border crossing points. And of course, there were several trucks for transportation of nuclear materials and radioactive source were provided to enhance the physical protection of the materials which will be transported within the country. You can see in the picture several training courses which were held in the past. Some of them were regional, some of them specific technical for border guards, for the customs services and other stakeholders in the country. You can see how they was trained to detect and carry out secondary inspection of vehicles where they are looking for the nuclear materials or radioactive sources. Of course, we implement also some practical trainings at the border crossing points itself, not only in our training center. And each local personnel of Customs, State Committee of National Security, Ministry of International Affairs, and border guards were trained at the sites. So after improving our capability, our center became a regional And now we get IAEA accreditation to become as a collaboration center for the region. So we can providing trainings and workshops for law enforcement agencies staff within the whole region. We established our mobile expert support team. They are functioning under Siberian SSA, and their task is support law enforcement agencies when they found something nuclear or radioactive materials within the country or in the at the border, to support them in investigation and identification of seized materials. To support nuclear forensics, we establish a nuclear forensics lab in our facility, and all sized or catched samples can be determined for the uranium enrichment, heavy metals, and others to provide, which was provided from crime scene and support investigation. In this slide, you can see some examples of seized and arrested materials which we had in the country within past 10 years. And one of them I will share with you later on. So, of course, in parallel, we are also implementing the UN Security Council Resolution 1540. Both instruments aim to prevent non-state actors from acquiring and using weapons of mass destruction. ICSANT provides the criminalization framework, while UN Security Council Resolution 1540 reinforces national control and accountability mechanism. Together, they strengthen our ability to monitor, detect, and respond to nuclear terrorism threats more effectively. To implement this resolution, we adopt a national action plan in 2018. In the working group of implementation of the national action plan were several ministries and agencies, starting with the Executive Office of President of the country, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Ministry of Economic Development, border guards, and other stakeholders and relevant ministries and agencies. So their task was to implement the national action plan, which was developed based on the requirements of the resolution. So you can see in the slide some details, tasks. And what we do, the first was to make amendments to the current legislation, with starting with the export control and develop control lists on the export control regime, and make several amendments to the legislation in the field of nuclear safety and security, chemical safety, biological safety. So this was one of the first steps to enhance the legislation in the country. So Tajikistan has actively engaged with the key international partners, including UNODC, for legislative assistance and implementation guidance, with UN 5040 committee to report progress and receive technical feedback, and the IAEA for technical support on nuclear security infrastructure. And of course, with ICSANT for participation in joint exercises and best practices exchange. These partnerships have been instrumental in enhancing our institutional resilience and aligning national policies with global counterterrorism standards. One of the events that we organized together with our partners is tabletop exercise and workshop on legal frameworks and nuclear forensics, which was called Snow Leopard. It was one of very interesting event where relevant experts from different countries and different organizations come together and discuss the hypothetical scenario of seizing nuclear materials and possible using in the terrorism acts. So we discussed here how the country's system can be organized to combat to the terrorist attacks with using of nuclear materials or weapons of mass destruction. And in the results, the experts come together that the one of the important part of the supporting country is establishing of nuclear forensics laboratories and criminalization of the acts of terrorism with using VMD. Another event that we had in Tajikistan was providing equipment and trading to border guards in Tajikistan to combat radiological and nuclear terrorism. Several handheld equipments and the vehicle for patrolling the Tajikistan-Afghanistan border was provided to detect and prevent potential smuggling of nuclear materials. Of course, during implementation, we get some challenges and solutions. For example, limited technical capacity and equipment for nuclear detection and response, since not all border crossing points of the country equipped with detection equipment, and some of the green borders are open for the threats coming from outside. Insufficient trained personnel across border and law enforcement units, complexity in translating international legal provisions into national law. So it was difficult to us how to correctly understand and implement it in our national legislation. To address this, Tajikistan pursued capacity building initiatives in collaboration with the partners such as UNODC and IAEA. We also invested in training programs, cross-border coordination, and public-aware campaigns on nuclear security threats. I would like to share with you with one case of seizing uranium pellets in Tajikistan, which has happened on May 2021. So together with the State Committee of National Security, there was a special operation where one criminal group was arrested and it was detained 133 pieces of nuclear materials. It was uranium dioxide tablets with a total weight of 600 grams, which is pretty big amount. So primary gamma spectrometry analysis showed that this is enriched uranium, which consists uranium-235, and it as a nuclear materials which can be used for the constructing or manufacturing of nuclear weapon. So together with our law enforcement agencies, we start investigation from where they can be found these materials, since there is no manufacturer in the country. It was imported from foreign countries to Tajikistan. It can be from the neighboring countries, And because of there was lack of a national library, we discussed with our colleagues from United States to assist us in characterization and possible finding the origin of the materials. So currently it is still in the investigation and analytical part has been finished. But since these people was arrested after investigation, uh, so during the investigation, there was mentioned that these people can use these nuclear materials as a for manufacturing of nuclear weapon or can be sold to the terrorists or other criminal groups that can be used for the act of terrorism to the citizens. Uh, Due to the lack of supporting documents, after investigation, the citizen was convicted under the Article 193 as a illicit trafficking of radioactive materials. And one of the person, which was very old, you get just penalties. So it shows us, this case shows us how important is improving the national legislation, because lack of legislation and lack of supporting documents cannot be give this criminal person to the right articles of the criminal code for the enforcement. So in conclusion, I would like to mention that Tajikistan remains committed to upholding the principles of ICSANT and contributing to the global fight against nuclear terrorism. Our experience demonstrates the value of strong legal frameworks, interagency coordination, and international cooperation. We look forward to continued engagement with our partners in building a safe world for all. Thank you for your attention. This is what short information about our experience in joining and implementation of ICSANT, and I will be happy to answer if any question. Thank you.
Thank you, Bakhtiyor, for a very informative presentation. I should also like to add that we at the UNODC, we're honored to work closely with Tajikistan to promote the benefits of being party to ICSANT and facilitate the country's adherence to the convention, as well as you mentioned, to accompany Tajikistan at the implementation stage. I personally would like to thank you and your colleagues for the outstanding collaboration that we had, particularly at the snow leopard exercise. So I would also like to remind to our guests, to our participants, that there is a possibility to send your questions to our speaker to the UNODC-ICSANT@un.org. So meanwhile, I would like to, there is one question regarding the adherence to ICSANT. So the question is, what three arguments would you use to convince a country that it would be of its benefit to become a party to ICSANT, particularly if this country, just like Tajikistan, doesn't have any nuclear energy infrastructure and not huge use of nuclear or other radioactive material. To you,
Thank you. Yes, thank you, Artem, for question. Of course, Tajikistan faced very difficulties in after becoming independence, because a lot of legacy sites and legacies coming from the Soviet time with nuclear activities in the country became a threat, because during the civil war, it can be in the hand of the bad guys, and other criminal groups. So I think one of the arguments can be is enhancing national and global security, because if you are establishing a nuclear security regime in your country, you will give you will be a member of the global security and give benefits from it. Another argument can be access to international support and cooperation. So when you are a member of ICSANT, you will have another different partners, international partners, and you can share with them the situation in the country, what is the difficulties, what is the challenges, and they can support you in implementation. Maybe another one is reinforcing international standing and responsibility, because through the enhancing its reputation and credibility in the international community. So if you are a member of ICSANT and you are implementing, it's like reputation of the country becoming more higher or bigger.
Thank you, Bakhtiyor. There's also a question, which I guess was a follow-up to your excellent example of the case of the interception of the uranium pellets. So, do you have an agreement with that case you mentioned, the United States, or maybe with other countries, of the acceptability of the analysis that they produce for the purposes of the criminal investigation? So, as I understood from your presentation, so there was analysis done by the US labs, and this analysis then afterwards was attached to the criminal investigation of this case. So how acceptable, what is the basis for acceptability of this analysis?
Yes, of course, when we had this event, this case was very challenging for us, because we did the first primary analysis. We confirmed that this is nuclear materials. We confirmed this is enriched uranium and can be used for the manufacture of nuclear weapon. But there was lack of information from where it came. And then we immediately inform IAEA through the ITDB, International Illicit Trafficking Database, and we inform all member states of IAEA that this case happened. And we get a response from the government of the United States that they can help us with further analytical support and investigation and further investigation of the case. Of course, we have an agreement between United States and Tajikistan on bilateral cooperation in the area of nuclear security. And so the results provided by them firstly was analyzed by our experts and was given to the law enforcement agencies like joint results of the investigation. So of course it was accepted by them, but we are still waiting for the analysis of from where it can be the origin of the nuclear materials.
Thank you. You also mentioned in your presentation, one of the challenges is to have the law enforcement authorities, and in particular border guards and border control authorities, to be aware of the risk that radioactive material can be smuggled or can be used for malicious purposes, as for example specified in ICSANT. So how do you overcome this this problem? How do you solve it? Is there, for example, do you include the training on CBRN or on radiological and nuclear threats to the compulsory training for law authorities? Is it a periodical or?
Yes, thank you for question. So we know that the border guards and customs services staff frequently changing their position from one place to one place. And when you are training one personnel, so maybe in the 2-3 years they can change their position, and you have to train again the new staff who came to the border crossing points. And we have a memorandum of understanding with border guards, with the State Committee of National Security, with Customs Services, Ministry of Internal Affairs, on training their staff in the field of nuclear security and CBRN materials detection. So additional, with the support of providing equipment to them, we are periodically organizing training courses for them, and also special courses we are organizing for law enforcement agencies who are dealing with investigation of nuclear materials and radioactive materials, to be familiar with the threats coming from the nuclear and radioactive sources.
Thank you, Bakhtiyor. A colleague of mine, Maria Lorenzo Sobrado, would like to ask a question. She raised her hand.
Thank you very much. Good morning and or good afternoon, and thank you for the excellent presentation. I would just like to build up on the comment you made about the assistance you have received with regard to a particular case, and highlight the importance and the beauty of ICSANT in relation to international cooperation mechanisms, because ICSANT offers states parties the possibility to also, through its cooperation mechanism, ask for assistance to other states parties. I just wanted to highlight that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Maria.
Thank you, Maria. So I will just double check whether we have any additional questions in the email box. So I don't see any. So with that, dear Bakhtiyor, I would like to thank you again for your time and excellent presentation and comments. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your time and for your attention as well. Please note that the recording of this event will soon be made available on our UNODC ICSANT website, which is www.unodc.org/ICSANT. So please feel free to rewatch it and share with your colleagues and friends who couldn't make it today. And just to conclude, I would like to say that we will continue the webinar series with new events to discover many other phases of ICSANT and of nuclear terrorism. So please stay tuned. Have a wonderful day. Thank you.
Thank you.